What's going on, movie fans? My name is Michael Weer. I love talking about movies, and earlier this year, I put together a top 10 most anticipated movies list of 2025. That's a video series that's been running on my channel since the very beginning of my channel because I love giving you guys my excitement for upcoming movies. I love talking about my anticipation for 10 individual films that are coming out in a calendar year. We don't necessarily have all the information about those movies yet. Sometimes we just have trailers. Sometimes all we have is a synopsis, a director, a cast, and that's enough to get me excited about it, enough to put it on my top 10 most anticipated list. Something I've been doing for the last couple of years is when I get to the end of watching all 10 of those films throughout the year, I've done quick reactions for those films, I've done full reviews for those films. What I like to do is take a look back at that list and rank that list from the worst to the best. Now, as always, this is never just about my list, it's about your list as well. So if you had a top 10 list going into 2025, well, I would love for you to put that list in the comment section down below. Or if you just want to take my top 10 list and sort of reconfigure it from your worst to best, well, I would love to see that as well. So throw that in the comment section. Now, we are going to get into my list here in a second, but if this is the first time you found my channel, well, I would love for you guys to hit that subscribe button, check out all the different content that I have, whether you like movie reviews, Blu-ray talk, or even ranked list videos. I've got a little bit of everything on my channel, and I'd love for you guys to check it out. All right, let's get into my top 10 most anticipated movies of 2025, ranked from the worst to the best.
Here we go.
That is one big pile of shit.
No, I shot him. Bullets in the fall killed him.
Kicking off this list at number 10, the worst movie from my top 10 most anticipated list, but also one of the worst movies that I saw this year is Mickey 17. Mickey 17 was a film that had a lot of potential. It had a director, Bong Joon-ho, who had just directed Parasite and won a bunch of awards for that movie. This was his next big film, so there was a lot of potential there. Then the stacked cast that was within this movie, you've got Toni Collette, Naomi Ackie, Mark Ruffalo, and Robert Pattinson's first big film since doing The Batman. And so with that stacked cast, with that director, and the idea that this was a space adventure film, well, I got really excited for this. I had to put it on my top 10 list. And while I did enjoy the setup to this film, I thought that they put the characters in interesting positions. For instance, Robert Pattinson's character plays this guy that's so desperate to get off Earth that he signs up for this space mission where he will get cloned and his clones are expendable. He'll feel each and every one of the deaths that his clone experiences, and then his consciousness will be transferred to the next clone. And then while that storyline's going on, you've got the space mission itself, which is led by Mark Ruffalo's character, who plays a political cult leader that doesn't want to live on Earth anymore, so he gathers up his most faithful followers and they shoot off to the stars to create a superior race. And so again, the setup for this film was interesting. I thought, okay, there's a lot of things to be talked about. I wonder how far we'll explore them. And unfortunately, the last half of this film really just fell flat for me. Whether it was too much going on, the over-bloated third act, where you've got Mark Ruffalo's character just going completely unhinged in a way that wasn't really fun to watch, while you've got Robert Pattinson versus himself in this film, because at one point, two clones are made, and so you've got two different Robert Pattinsons going around, and I thought that was going to be the big, oh my god moment of the movie, like, these two are going to hate each other, I wonder what's going to happen with these two, and unfortunately, the director tries to play some of the seriousness for laughs, and yeah, he does try to go for a dark comedy aspect, but unfortunately, it seemed like several of the actors or actresses within this film didn't know that it was supposed to be a dark comedy, because you've got characters in this film that play all of their roles super serious, and then you've got one guy that's like, oh, I'll crack a joke here, this will make sense here, right? And so it's kind of poking fun at itself, but all of the characters aren't doing that, so it just comes off as the actors felt like they were in different movies. Then there's my biggest issue with this film. The film is at 2 hours and 19 minutes, and it is way too long for what they had going on. There's so many moments in this film that feel like they could have been cut out, they could have been left on the cutting room floor, you could have had a tighter film, but instead the director decides at the end of the film to explore each and every character, where each and every one of them wound up, and it just goes on and goes on. Just when you think the end of the movie is there, he's got something else to tag on. And that's an issue I have with another movie on this list that we will get into in a little while. But for me, this movie was disappointing on just about every level. It wasn't a fun space adventure film. I didn't really enjoy the acting in this movie. Again, the setup was interesting, but then it just falls flat. And so when you have a good setup that falls flat, to me, it's one of the most disappointing movies of the year, and it's definitely the worst movie on this list. The next couple of movies on this list are movies that I'm glad I watched, but they're more than likely one and done films. Films that I won't go back to, films that I won't rush to put on these shelves back there. And so at number 9, we have the film The Conjuring: Last Rites. This was on my list because this was the last film for the Conjuring portion of the Conjuring universe, the last film with Ed and Lorraine Warren, played by both Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. So with that knowledge, without a trailer, without a synopsis, I threw this on my top 10 list, hoping it was going to be a fun time. And I'll say this, it was a fun time. It had a lot of those moments we've come to expect out of the Conjuring franchise, a couple of really creepy images throughout the film, some well-placed jump scares, an interesting enough story, another family that's in need of the Warrens' help, and again, it's another true life story that they've doctored up. My biggest issue with this film, and probably one of the reasons I won't go back to this movie in the future, is the main villain of this movie being a haunted mirror. Not something living within the mirror, which is where I thought they were going throughout this film. No, just the haunted mirror itself. The mirror is never explained, and I guess it's technically in the real life Warren's lore that there was this haunted mirror that they cover and they keep in their special location of haunted items, but there wasn't something attached to it. And that's something that we weren't really used to in the Conjuring universe. Yes, The Conjuring did subvert our expectations in previous films. For instance, in the first movie, you think you're following around a demon, but it turns out to be a witch. In the second film, it really is a demon. It's Valak, but the whole time you thought you were dealing with these spirits that were in a house, but they were really being controlled by Valak. In the third film, it turned out to be humans using witchcraft, and that was a fun twist. And I thought, all of those setups for the main villains in those movies was really well done. So when you get to the final film, I was hoping for this really big, spectacular what's inside the mirror, and it's just a haunted mirror. And that was really disappointing. I wanted so much more out of the final time with the Warrens, the final adventure with the Warrens, and we just didn't get it. We got a haunted mirror and some jump scares, and that's why this movie's a one and done. At number 8 is another movie that I did enjoy watching the one time. Probably not a movie I'll seek out in the future, although my kids might make me watch it in the future, and it is Freakier Friday. Listen, I threw this on my top 10 list because I'm a huge fan of that 2004 Freaky Friday film with Jamie Lee Curtis and with Lindsay Lohan. I loved that original movie. My wife loves that original movie. In fact, we've shown it to our kids and they love that movie. It's a movie that we watch several times throughout the year, every year. It's a fun one to watch together. So when I heard that Freakier Friday was coming out, that Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan would be reprising their roles, I had to put it on my top 10 list. And again, it's another movie I'm glad I watched, but it's a one and done. The plot is extremely weak. Oh, here we go again. We've got people body swapping with each other, but instead of doing what they should have done and just having Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis swap bodies again, well, instead this time Lindsay Lohan has 2 teenage daughters, and so they're all 4 of them going to swap bodies with each other, which leads to younger teenage girls saying things that adults should say, or adults saying things that kids should say. That'll be funny, right? Now, I was excited to see Chad Michael Murray back in a film, and I really hope that guy has a resurgence in his career because I've always been a fan of Chad Michael Murray, but his portion in this movie was also annoying. How did he go through all of that with them in Freaky Friday, and then now he's not somebody that's in one of their lives? He's not married to Lindsay Lohan's character. It doesn't make any sense. Instead, now you've got this forced together relationship between Lindsay Lohan and this new guy, and then Chad Michael Murray is there because the teenage girls, who are really the adults, set it all up. Again, there's just too much going on in this film. They should have kept it simple, and I would have had a much better time with the film. At number 7, we have the last movie on this list that I consider a one and done, and it is The Running Man. And much like the previous 2 entries on this list, I did have a fun time with it, but again, it's not a movie I'll be rushing to see again anytime soon. And the real reason for that is because while I enjoyed the fresh beginning to this film, how Ben signed up for the Running Man competition, how he knew what he was getting himself into, into when he signed up for this, and how ultimately he was just trying to make a better life for his wife and his kid. Where it falls flat for me is that it becomes another movie where a guy decides halfway through the competition, you know what? It's about fighting the man. And so now it's him versus the system. It's not just him trying to win $1 billion to save his kid's life. No, it's him trying to fight the system. And so it goes down this path of movies I've seen so many times before. And then when you get to the end of this film, Edgar Wright doesn't know when to stop filming. Like, there's a couple moments where you're like, hey, if you ended it here, you can kind of salvage what you've done with this film. It'd be a bold choice, like one instance on a plane, for instance, but instead they keep going. And then you're like, okay, well, if you end it here after the conspiracy video, that'd be a good, nope, you're not going to end it there. We're going to check in on each and every character. And this is kind of what I was talking about with Mickey 17 earlier. When you explain every character and how each and every one of their situations works out, I end up getting bored with that. I don't want to know where every character ended up. I want some of it left up to my interpretation. I want some of it left up to my imagination. You don't need to show me where this character landed, where this character landed, where this character landed, and that's exactly what they do in this movie, and it's so annoying. Another movie over 2 hours that could have had a lot of film left on the cutting room floor, and you would have had a better film. The next 3 movies on my list are all movies that I enjoyed, but there was something about them that really disappointed me. These won't be on the most disappointing movies of the year list, but they are movies that I wanted a little bit more out of. Maybe that's my own fault. Maybe my expectations were a little too high, but they were all movies that I was hoping for the best. And again, I felt a little let down. They're all movies that I think I need to watch 1 or 2 more times. So with all that in mind, at number 6, we have the film, The Black Phone 2. Black Phone 2 is a film that I was really looking forward to because they were bringing back the cast from the first movie. Both the boy and the girl are a little older now, but they brought them back into this film. And then you get Ethan Hawke back as the grabber. That was probably the most intriguing thing. Like, how were they going to make a film set after the events of the first movie and somehow bring back Ethan Hawke? Because the grabber was definitively killed in that very grounded film. And that's where this movie gets into a little bit of disappointment territory, because the grabber now has extreme supernatural powers. For instance, if you're sleeping, he can now attack and kill you in your dreams, much like Freddy Krueger. And that was a bit disappointing, although I was ready to roll with that. I was like, okay, we can do the dream power thing because I don't know when we're going to get another Freddy Krueger movie, so let's just give the dream powers to the grabber. Cool, let's do it. Then they give him invisible man powers, where if someone's sleeping, he can still affect people in the real world, which doesn't make a lot of sense. The movie kind of breaks its rules throughout the film, and that's why I put it in this category of films that I enjoyed, but I was a little bit disappointed and I need to see again. Because maybe on a future viewing that won't bother me as much, but on my first and only viewing of this film so far, you've got a grabber who was very grounded in the first movie, who then goes to the next movie and becomes Freddy Krueger and the Invisible Man and the grabber all in one. But I don't want to end this on a negative note. I thought the visuals in this movie were a lot of fun. I thought the look of the grabber was great. I thought the Super 8 camera scenes during the nightmare visions were incredible. Some of the best stuff I've seen in a theater this year. So I want to end this on a positive note and say that Black Phone 2 is a movie that I really enjoyed, but I'm going to need to watch it 1 or 2 more times. That leads me to my number 5 pick on this list, and at number 5, we have the film 28 Years Later, a film that I was very much so looking forward to. Danny Boyle was directing this film. Of course, Danny Boyle directed 28 Days Later, so I was really looking forward to him returning to this franchise, giving us the newest entry, and it's a movie that if it wasn't for the last 5 to 10 minutes of the film, I probably would have this at my number 2 slot on this list. That's how much I loved the rest of this film, but that's how much I really didn't love the last 5 to 10 minutes of this movie. But I mean it when I say there was a lot about this movie I loved. I loved the story of this film. I loved the acting in this film. The film gave us acting from Ralph Fiennes, Jodie Comer, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Alfie Williams, who gave fantastic performances. And then when you get into the story of this film, the first 45 minutes is more of an action-adventure film, something I think a lot of people were really looking forward to seeing in this 28 Years universe. You've got Aaron Aaron Taylor Johnson as the father, Alfie Williams as his son. They go out into the wilderness past the point of safety and they start taking on these zombies. You get introduced to this world of alphas, these zombies who you're going to need several arrows to put these things down. And I love that whole first 45 minutes of this movie where it's more of an action adventure film. And then when they get back, it then turns into more of an emotional story between Alfie Williams' character and his mom, played by Jodie Comer. Because she's sick, she can't get the help that she needs in the safe village that they live in. So he takes her beyond the point of safety to a doctor that he's heard about, played by Ralph Fiennes. And there's a moment towards the end of this film between Ralph Fiennes, Jodie Comer, and Alfie Williams about death, about loss, about letting people go that is so emotional. And it was such a great emotional moment that I shed a tear. Like, it was that damn good. So when I say I loved a lot about this movie, I really did love the acting. I really did love the story. But where it gets into that territory of disappointment, again, is in the last 5 to 10 minutes. Now, I've already covered this in my full review for this movie, so if you want more thoughts on that, go check that out. I won't get into it here, but I am looking forward to 28 years later, Bone Temple, which comes out early next year. I'm curious where they're going to go with this storyline that they created at the end of this film, and if they're going to right some of the wrongs that us fans felt at the end of that film. Now, that said, there were a lot of people that didn't have a problem with those last 5 to 10 minutes, and if you're one of those people, maybe this film is higher on your list, but that's why it's at number 5 for me. That's why it's in this category of I really enjoyed it, but I need to watch it again and see where my disappointments are. And closing off this list of movies that I really enjoyed, but I was a bit disappointed by, is my number 4 pick on this list, and unfortunately, that is my most anticipated movie of the entire year in Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. I really enjoyed so much about this movie. Tom Cruise in an action film once again, sign me up, I was there day one. I also really loved the emotional beats in this movie between Ethan Hawke and his team that's created this very strong bond over the last several films, and when some horrible things happen to some of the people on Ethan's team, you feel that. So I felt like the emotions were there, I thought the action was there. But unfortunately, my biggest issue with this movie, the reason I was a bit disappointed, was this AI programming being the big villain once again. And that was my same issue with Dead Reckoning, and I know this was immediately following Dead Reckoning. They had to finish off that storyline, but I was hoping there would be a human villain that would be greater than the AI villain. Not to say that Tom Cruise didn't have some really fun action scenes against some humans in this movie, whether it was Ethan Hunt in the water or Ethan Hunt in the sky, literally jumping from plane to plane. Those scenes were really fun to watch, and they must have been really fun to film. Getting back over to my negative, I didn't love that the big bad of not only this film, but kind of the entire franchise is this AI. I mean, they go all the way back to a plot point from part 3, and I appreciated them bringing in the rabbit's foot from part 3, but again, it all led up to Ethan Hunt versus an AI program. And there's just something hollow about that. I wanted it to be flesh and bones. I wanted somebody to be behind this program, and maybe that's just wishful thinking on my part, but that's why this movie's at number 4. A movie I really enjoyed, I was a little disappointed by, but once again, a movie that I need to watch again in the future to see where I really stand with this film. That brings us to the top 3 films on this list. 3 films that I really enjoyed sitting down in a theater and watching on the big screen, and 3 films that I can't wait to put on those shelves back there. And at number 3, we have the film Shelby Oaks. Now, before we go any further, Shelby Oaks wasn't on my top 10 list initially at the beginning of this year. I actually had Mortal Kombat 2 on this list, but when they pulled it from the release slate and moved it to summer of 2026, I needed something to fill that spot. I hadn't seen Shelby Oaks yet, and Shelby Oaks is a movie that I've genuinely been anticipating for several years now, so I took that movie, put it in its spot on this list, so that's why it's here. All right, now we can move forward. Shelby Oaks is a movie directed by Chris Stuckman, and for those of you who may not know, Chris Stuckman is a movie reviewer, and some would say one of the best movie reviewers for a very long time, and then he took his career as a movie reviewer and turned it into a movie director. He wrote the film Shelby Oaks, and he started a Kickstarter campaign and asked fans to donate to this campaign so that he could get his movie off the ground. I was one of those fans that donated. Listen, I was getting a Blu-ray out of it. That's a pretty good deal. I ended up getting a couple of posters as well. That's pretty fun. But on top of my excitement for Chris getting his movie off the ground, getting his movie to a theater, all of that was very exciting. I actually really enjoyed this movie as well, and I enjoyed it for several reasons. One of the reasons I enjoyed this movie was how it was filmed. Some of the movie is shot as found footage, some of the movie is shot as a documentary, and other parts of this movie are filmed as a straightforward film. And I love the way that he blended those three styles of filmmaking into one cohesive story. I thought it worked really well. I also really enjoyed the performance out of Camille Sullivan, who played the character of Mia, and Mia is a character looking for her sister Riley, who went missing many years ago when she was part of a group of paranormal paranoids, a group of people basically going in doing these paranormal investigations and posting their findings on YouTube. And one fateful day, they all go into the town of Shelby Oaks and they all go missing. And so now you've got Mia 14 years later still looking for her sister. Now, when it comes to the negatives of Shelby Oaks, I know a lot of reviewers had talked about the writing, but honestly, I think that's more of a parroted talking point. Like a couple of big reviewers said, I think the writing could have been a bit better. And then everybody took that and ran with it to the point where almost every review that I watched was somebody saying, I really liked the movie, but I think Chris should take somebody else's writing for his next movie. And while that may be true, it was just irritating to hear it over and over, especially when I didn't really have an issue with the writing in this film. I had more of an issue with the way the movie ended. It felt a bit sloppy towards the end. Like, I loved the build up for this movie. I loved what Chris had done through the first two acts of this film. But when you get to the end of this movie, it's like convenient thing, convenient thing, convenient thing, explain everything to the viewer really fast, and the movie's over. And that was a bit disappointing. I know Chris was going for a bit of a twist ending, but I didn't feel like that stuck the landing as well. So for me, it wasn't necessarily the writing that I had an issue with. It was more the messy ending, but I still had a fun time with Shelby Oaks overall, and it's a movie I plan on watching again in the future. Coming in at number 2, we have the film Predator: Badlands. This was a movie that I was really looking forward to, mostly because of the director. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Predator franchise as it is, but the Predator franchise has had its ups and its downs. But lately, under the direction of Dan Trachtenberg, I've really enjoyed the movies. Of course, Dan Trachtenberg directed Prey, which was one of my favorite movies the year that it came out. And then this year, he directed the film Predator: Killer of Killers, which was an animated Predator film that I really enjoyed. So I was really looking forward to Predator: Badlands, and this movie did not disappoint. The action in this movie is incredible. I loved watching the Predator as the good guy this time around, because typically we're following the Predator, but he's following someone that we're rooting for, and so we want that person to win. Typically, it's the Predator versus a human, but this time around, it's a Predator who's trying to prove himself to the rest of his clan, to the rest of his tribe, and mostly to his father. And so he goes out to hunt down the biggest, baddest thing, and while he's hunting this thing down, he runs into Weyland-Yutani robots, who are, of course, from the Alien universe, and so we kind of see an Alien and Predator movie coming in the future because of this. And again, there was a lot of kick-ass action throughout this film, and I had a great time with it. And that leads me to my final film on this list, my favorite movie from my top 10 most anticipated list of 2025, and that movie is Superman.
Hey, buddy, eyes up here.
This was such a fun movie. I loved what James Gunn did with this film. I love that he took his blend of superhero film, plus he took the comic book aspect of Superman and blended that together so damn well. I know a ton of people have said this, and I said this in my review, but this really felt like a comic book come to life. This felt like you took a comic book of Superman, you threw it on the big screen, and you just had fun with it. Whether you were having fun with the action scenes of Superman versus these otherworldly aliens, or it was Superman versus his arch nemesis Lex Luthor, where Nicholas Hoult absolutely shined as Lex Luthor, or Superman and his relationship with Lois. So I love the emotions in this movie. I love the action in this movie. It's one of the few films that I had to watch back to back. Like, I saw this movie, I went back the next day and watched it again. That's how much fun I had with Superman. It's a movie that I plan on watching so many more times, and I thought it was a great kickoff to James Gunn's DCU. And so for all those reasons, Superman is my number 1 movie on on this list. And guys, those are my top 10 most anticipated movies list of 2025, ranked from worst to best. I hope you guys enjoyed this list. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you have a top 10 most anticipated list from 2025 and you want to throw that in the comment section, that would be awesome. Or if you just want to take my 10 movies and put them in your ranked order, I'd love to see that as well. So throw all your comments in the comment section down below. And finally, guys, if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and it helps me right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. All right, guys, we got to the end of my top 10 most anticipated movies list of 2025, ranked from the worst to the best. I hope you guys enjoyed this. It's a video series that I've been doing for a couple of years now, and I've really enjoyed doing it. We are a little over a month away from a brand new list for 2026, and I can't wait to get to that. There's so many ranked lists coming from my channel in the next couple of weeks, so be on the lookout for that. But in the meantime, if you want to check out any of the other content on my channel, well, I've got all of my best and worst of 2025 right there, and I've got all of my 2025 movie reviews right there.